Excellent. So hi, everyone. I'm Dan. Thanks for coming. I was previously the CEO of Dick Security, and now I lead data, identity, and AI security for Prisma Cloud at Palo Alto Networks. And thanks for coming. Palo Alto bought my company about 6 months ago, and today what we're going to talk about is cloud and data and AI security and all the buzzwords around DSPM and ASPM and all you need to know on how to actually protect data and AI security in your environments. So when we started Dig Security, now Prisma Cloud DSPM, all customers kept asking us the same exact questions. First off, of course, what data even exists across our environments? Sounds like a simple question, right? But 90% of all organizations today still can't answer the first question here. What data exists across my AWS, Azure, GCP, Snowflake, on-prem, SaaS, right? Second, of course, how is that data being used? Which applications, users, vendors, machines are touching which pieces of data? And lastly, of course, how can we protect that data? How can we protect that data at rest, in motion, or in use? Or how do we protect that data from specific scenarios? Data exfiltration, ransomware, compliance breaches, data misuse. Now, if we kind of think about this, data stores are always the actual target of an attack, right? That's how you monetize an attack on a specific organization, right? That's what we're all here to do, actually protect our data. But up until now, we didn't really have specific controls aimed at around our data. We had EDRs to essentially protect our VMs. We had NDRs to actually protect our networks. But we didn't really have a DDR solution to actually protect our data. And that's kind of the whole principle of data security posture management and how do we build data-centric controls. Now, why is the problem of data security in the cloud today such a big problem? It's a problem because of fragmentation. All of us are experiencing this explosion of public clouds, right? We started running across multiple clouds. So we have our AWS, but we might have Azure and GCP, so we run across 2 clouds or 3 clouds and kind of double and triple and quadruple the variety of data assets that we now need to also protect, right? We started running across microservices. Each microservice is connected to its own type of data store. So how do we essentially protect those? Now we're seeing the rise of AI deployments. All AI today, or 95% of AI deployments today, are being trained in the cloud. So that also puts additional data in the cloud as well. And we also have multiple deployment models in the cloud as well. So we have platform as a service like RDS and Redshift and any type of managed service that AWS builds and manages for us. But we still have everything that we lifted and shifted from on-prem, right? Anyone today inside your organization can boot up a VM, put a MySQL on Linux or an MS-SQL on Windows, and you will have to start protecting it as well. And lastly, of course, we have the new data clouds, Snowflake, Atlas, Databricks, any type of data service today that is also holding your information. Now, what we see today is that a typical enterprise will have at least 20 different types of data stores that they own across hundreds, if not thousands, of data store instances. And that's what we need to essentially protect across our organizations. What we also see is that 90% of all enterprises today are looking to operationalize AI architectures. And all of that is currently being done in the public clouds. So how do we build controls around this landscape that we essentially have? That's what we're going to talk about today. So what we built at Dig Security, now at Prisma Cloud DSPM, is we built a data security platform that is aimed to essentially protect data in the world of generative AI and the world of multi-clouds. Now, what are the foundations of protecting data in this specific type of an environment? First off, of course, how do we discover any type of data store? How do we build an inventory of any type of data store that we essentially have across our environments? Now, why is discovery a difficult problem? Well, up until now, if you had kind of a legacy data security vendor, they all said, we do discovery. You install the product, and then the first question that they ask you is, well, now manually connect me to each type of data store that you own. That is not feasible in an environment that has thousands of data stores in an environment that 10% changes every single month, right? So we cracked this discovery piece. Finding managed services is the easy part, but we also scan disks of any type of running VMs across your environments, anything that we suspect that is running a database, high IOPS, large disk sizes, and essentially we scan the disks and look for remnants of database technologies. So we look for a MySQL running on a Linux, we look for an MS SQL running in a Windows, and we automatically add that into your catalog. Everything is done automatically. Now, once we discover and find all these different types of data stores, we also automatically classify all the data. Now, the big innovation and what I think catapulted dig security and kind of this approach in this market is that, again, we will never use a connection string. What we essentially do is every single time we find a data store, we either take a backup, an export, or a snapshot of that running data store. We mount it on the side in the customer's environment, do the analysis of the data, and then essentially once we're done, we'll eliminate that backup, that export, that snapshot that we just generated. What this allows us is that typically, in less than 24 hours, we already have a map of all the customer data inside their environments. Now, what this approach also allows us to do is that we will never copy any data outside of the customer's environments, and we will keep the data residency. So every time we will scan, let's say, data in the UK, we will scan the data in the UK, and if we find data in Australia, we'll also scan that data in Australia. And that allows us to essentially maintain data residency, which is crucial for data privacy regulations. So after we find discovery, we find all the different types of data stores. We classify all the pieces of data, structured, unstructured, semi-structured data stores. Then essentially what we do is we bring context into the data itself. Now, context, again, is a big word. But in context, essentially, first off, where do we have sensitive information? Where do we have regulated information? PII, PHI, any type of regulated data. Where do we have sensitive data just to us? It can be artist contracts if you're a music label. It can be molecules if you're a pharma. Anything that is sensitive specifically to your organization. After we classify the actual information, we bring in data misconfigurations, over-permissive access to data, data sovereignty issues. Sovereignty is a big topic for a lot of our customers today. And where do we have any type of data risk across our data stores and now also our AI pipelines? Now, the combination of these two columns is what Gartner now calls DSPM, and they named us a leader in the specific category. But how does this also now pertain to AI security as well? Well, basically, AI security is a data security problem, right? We still need to find all the AI services. And the goal there is to understand what data is being fed to these specific models and how do we protect them as well. So it's an extension, how we look at it. Now, on the other side of it, so we just talked about data security posture management. On the other side of it, we have also data detection and response, DDR. This is a term that we coined, data detection and response. So what does this mean? While we have our data discovery and data classification, data risk analysis, and that's kind of analyzing data at rest, what happens if someone decides to, someone that has access, should have access to the specific data, decides to copy all the data to a different cloud? Today, no traditional data security that only looks at data at rest will analyze or find that. So data detection response analyzes every type of data interaction. We look at admin events and data events and connections, and we're able to flag when something goes wrong with the data itself. Mass downloads, mass uploads, someone copied data out of the cloud, someone uploads malware. We see a mass encryption event, like ransomware. We're able to essentially detect in near real time and also respond to it through an automation, okay? And the combination of both static data analysis and real-time data analysis is a complete data security platform in our view, of course. Now, we don't deploy any type of agents or proxies. We integrate in a couple minutes because it's just deploying a set of roles in the customer's environments. And of course, we have zero interference with the customer's cloud because we're an out-of-band solution. We will never connect directly to the data stores. We only analyze data on the side. So how does this whole thing work? And then we'll hop over to a demo. We use basically three main types of technologies. The first one, of course, is cloud-native APIs for our discovery, metadata, and posture. The second, of course, is cloud logs. So we look at admin events and data events and connections. And lastly, of course, what we call is an outpost. We typically put one outpost per customer cloud. And that is the actual component that does the data analysis in the customer's environment. We also do the analysis in each region. So let's say, for example, you have two regions. The outpost will essentially spin up VMs, one in each region, to do the data analysis of the specific data stores there. And that is how we work with banks, insurance companies, retailers, healthcare tech, anyone that uses Prisma Cloud DSPM today. We will never see your data. We will never copy your data. Everything remains in the customer's environment. Let's say data security 2.0. Okay? So let's take a look at how this looks like in a live demo, which is always a dangerous piece, but let's take a look if it works well for us today. Yeah, let's do it. So this is the Prisma Cloud DSPM environment. And what we're able to see here is, first off, our opinionated approach that we have 4 main types of personas when we think about cloud security. We have, of course, the cloud security engineer, the cloud security admins. I'm guessing many of these are in the room. We have the runtime people, the people that like manage the agents in the specific environments. We have the application security and how do we bring infrastructure as code to the whole environment. And now we have a data security persona, that persona that is aimed to discover, classify, govern the data, handle privacy regulations, compliance regulations across the environments. Now what we're able to see here in the environment is the Prisma Cloud DSPM dashboard. First off, of course, we'll find any type of data store that lives across the environment, across AWS, GCP, Azure, Snowflake, O365, on-prem, any place that we essentially have data in. And once we start analyzing the actual data, we'll provide you with a data security posture score. That score essentially enables us to analyze and visualize what do we have across our environments. What is the risk analysis across our environments? And all of this is built on the premise that we start analyzing each piece of data store that you have across it. We'll highlight exposure issues and data footprint issues and assets that are not being protected properly. And of course, we'll give you a map of any piece of data that you essentially have across the world and across your environments as well. Now, all of this is built, again, on an inventory that we build across your environments. So let's take a simple asset that we were able to find across your environment as well. This is Delve Data. Delve Data, as we can see, is a bucket. And that bucket lives, of course, in AWS. And first off, we were able to see all the information about it. Is it encrypted, private, or public? Which keys is it using? A lot of our customers have regulations around which keys do they need to encrypt data based on their own regulations. Who created this type of data store and who last modified it? All of this, of course, is done through analyzing access logs and understanding who specifically is interacting with each type of data store. That allows us to do data ownership. Any type of usage information. What we call this asset freshness. This is something very unique to us. Typically, what we find in data, if we see some sort of a violation with data, we need to be able to understand who owns it and can we delete it, right? Now, what we discovered today is about 45 to 50% of all data stores in the cloud are unused. We're hoarders by nature. We want to hoard data, right? And with freshness, because we look at data activity, we're able to tell you, is this data store used, by whom, which applications use it, and so on. And of course, any posture information. Does it have versioning in place? Do we have data retention policies? Does it have the right logging in place so we can detect if something goes wrong? And then, of course, all the information about the data store itself. So this is a bucket, so unstructured data stores. We have files inside. Do we have any type of malware in the environment? Palo Alto has Wildfire. We analyze each type of file in any type of bucket, whether it is in O365, whether it is in an unstructured data store, in an NFS, EFS, doesn't really matter. We'll analyze the information. Do we have any types of database backups in place? SQL dumps, backpack files, RDB dumps, any type of backups that we're able to find across the customer's environments. We call these shadow backups because usually they're high-value targets, but no one knows that they exist. Of course, do we have any files that are public, either because the ACLs open them or because the asset itself is public? And of course, then, any piece of sensitive information that we were able to find. Now here we're able to see that we found a lot of sensitive information. And all of this is done automatically. You don't need to do anything. So what we're able to see here is that we found a lot of email addresses. Now when we analyze data, we're able to analyze any type of file out there in the market. Zips, stars, parquets, PDFs, Excels, documents. We're able to read MIP labels if we have them. And for each one, we will tell you exactly what we were able to find, where we were able to find it. So we have IP addresses and zip codes and specific keys. We'll show you masked example for each one, and we'll even tell you the line number that we found that information in. And all of this, again, is done automatically. Now, we do this for any type of file out there. We even analyze images. So we are the only solution today that does OCR out of the box as well. And here, let's just show you a simple example. I think I have a US example. Should be around here. No, I'll just take Spain. This is a public file. So what we're able to see that we analyzed and found that this is a driver's license number found in a specific image. And across customer environments, we were able to find checks and passport photos that customers upload and so on. So we were able to see that across the environments. Now, of course, we do this for any type of data store out there in the market. So not only buckets, but we're also able to do this, for example, for structured data stores. This is an RDS, for example. And we're able to see that we're able to find any type of sensitive data living across any type of column, across any type of database. We will always go column by column, database by database, and analyze all the information about it. And very quickly, you have a map of your entire information. Now, for each type of data store, we also look at any type of data activity. Who did what with this type of data store? This helps us with accountability. And we also tell you who are the active identities. It can be machines, applications, users, vendors. When did they last use it? What did they last do? How did we use this recently? We work with a very large retailer in Europe. And they reached out to us and they said, hey, we discovered through the tool that we had a misconfiguration and we had access issues. We over-provisioned access that allowed a very, very sensitive bucket across our organization to have access to all the cloud users. All of them can essentially access that sensitive data. Can you tell us, through the history, who are the users that actually abused that access? And what we were able to do is go through the active identities and find those specific individuals that access that data that up until now, it would have taken you months to investigate that specific incident. We're able to visualize access across our cloud, across our environment. We're able to show you who has read access, who has write access, who can essentially do what. And of course, we visualize risks across our environments. Now, of course, we come with out-of-the-box risks. All customers will get and be able to see all the sensitive data that is open to the world or access that other vendors might have to your data. If we know those vendors, we'll actually tell you, by the way, we've seen this vendor in the past. This is Cloudinary. But why does Cloudinary have access to your developer secrets? We're able to show you, for example, PCI that is open to the world, or data flowing outside of production to a dev or staging environment. Up until now, it was very hard for us to essentially visualize data flows across our environments. But because we monitor the data movements, we're able to do so very easily. We're able to show you data flowing outside of Europe, violating your GDPR policies. Why is this data moving to the US? And of course, we even look, for example, at something that I call shadow backups or orphan snapshots. Orphan snapshots, in my opinion, is one of the largest pandemics in the cloud. Think about this scenario. A customer will create a database. They say, we don't need this database, but let's take a backup just before I delete it. And then we're stuck with a graveyard of hundreds, if not thousands, of snapshots that just live in our environment. No one knows that they exist. No one monitors them. And that's kind of the issue there. So, by the way, this was the issue that Imperva got breached. No one was monitoring their shadow backups. An attacker was able to find them, extract them. No one knew until the information was already out. So we visualize any type of orphan snapshots that live across the environment. Now, of course, customer can create their own types of risks. So each organization might say, we have our own types of issues. So let's go over there. And let's say, for example, you might say, we should never have any type of developer secret in our environment. And if we do, then we want to notify that into our SOC. So we can say, if we ever find a developer secret in our AWS environment, we want to automatically create a risk and say, no secrets allowed in AWS. We put it to that as a high risk and automatically automate a process that will go automatically into our SOC. Very, very quickly to build your own types of data security policies across the organization. Now, recently we also introduced and expanded this. So not only we're able to see the assets, we're also able to see any type of data type that we found across the environments. So very quickly you have a map of, first off, where do we have sensitive data around the globe in a very simple fashion? What kind of sensitive data have we found across the environment, whether it is social security numbers or credit cards or email addresses or cities or anything that we were able to find automatically. And let's say, for example, we as an organization might say to ourselves, well, we should never have passport photos across our environments, passport numbers. Not only we're able to see where do we have hotspots of data, we can pinpoint that to the exact files that essentially contain this information, to the exact row numbers that essentially contain that information, all of that through a very simple analysis, pinpointing of the actual data itself. And we can do that and trigger and build custom risks specifically around specific types of data types or geographies, and each organization will essentially build their own. Now, many times when we implement a DSPM technology, and of course Tomer will share his own kind of journey with like DSPM, customers come with a specific agenda. We have to clean up all secrets until the end of 2024. Or we need to make sure that we don't have credit cards across our environment. So we need to make sure that we don't have social security numbers. Why? Because we got hit in a specific type of audit. And we need to be able to clean that up. So it's very, very powerful. And we're even able to do this across all files across the organization. So let's say, for example, in a very simple fashion, and I'm sure that all of you did this exercise very recently, show me all files that are public across my organization that we found something in. Very powerful. You'll get the list of any file across any type of clouds, on-prem, SaaS, any file that is accessible to the world without doing anything. Not only that, you might say, show me all the files that are public, but also have more than 100 sensitive records. And you'll pinpoint and analyze that automatically as well. Very, very powerful. And now, of course, with the rise of AI, we're able to also analyze and find any type of AI application also running across your clouds. We're able to find your model families. We're able to find all AI applications using Claude or Bison or Llama or any type of custom model. And we do this again automatically. Any type of AI managed service, whether it is SageMaker, OpenAI, or Bedrock, or even if someone plugs in a VM, puts a GPU on it, starts training their own models, we use the same technology that scans the disks, look for specific types of AI packages, we'll automatically add that into a catalog as well. We highlight risks, and we also analyze any type of data being fed into each type of sensitive model. So what is the main concerns that most of our customers, every time we talk with the customers about AI, they essentially say to us, we want to govern AI. Like we govern everything else. What does governing AI mean? We want to have an inventory, right? We want to be able to understand which AI models are being fed sensitive data, corporate data. We want to be able to understand which AI models have risks. We just started a pilot of our ASPM technology. This is currently in beta with, I think, about 20 customers. And what we found is that one of the largest healthcare, we found a public model being trained on sensitive data that is available to the entire world. Anyone can ask questions to that public model. In a different customer, we found all the outputs of any type of AI model just being fed into a public bucket. That type of stuff happens all the time. We don't know how to look for it because these AI services keep pushing more and more analysis into this world and, of course, more and more services. Now, for each type of AI deployment, we're able to see all the information about it. Where is it being trained? Where is it inferring data from? Which model is it being using? What's the AI deployment that essentially has all this information? Where is it being training the data from? All of this expanded into the AI application ecosystem as well. Very, very powerful. And we do this again for any type of AI application. I think that I have a cool example also here with, I think it was this one, that we're also able to visualize one deployment into multiple applications, because sometimes a specific model feeds into multiple applications, and we're able to visualize that as well and build restrictions around those specific types of applications. Now, by the end of July, when we're essentially going GA with our AI security model, we will cover the LLM top 10, so any type of risks specifically for AI risks. We threat model each type of our AI services. And I think next week we're also publishing a very large vulnerability that we were able to find through this research of OpenAI. that we will publish, I think, next week, if I remember the marketing schedule as well. Now, up until now, we kind of discussed discovery, classification, risk, posture, flows. The other piece of it is, of course, detection and response. So the whole principle here, and what we wanted to do, is to be able to analyze and build rules that are wide, that will cover any type of data service that we essentially have across the organization, and be able to flag it, automate a response to it, anything that might happen across the organization as well. So let's just take a very simple example. Now, this actually happens, I think, on year one of DIG, and I'll kind of share this story because it's a very interesting story. We onboarded a very large bank. And what we were able to find there is that every single day for the past 3 years, they had a cron job running. What did that cron job do? Every single day, that cron job copied all of their financial reports from their AWS environment to a different AWS environment that doesn't belong to them. How can something like this even happen? It happens because no one monitors how data is being used after we give permissions. We just don't have the actual tools. We don't know what to look for in the logs. So this is where kind of DDR comes into the picture. We pre-built policies. We constantly enrich them with different types of data services and AI services. And scenarios like this is what popped up in the bank. What we were able to see is that not only we were able to detect that this specific thing happened, okay, we're able to identify what was the asset that it happened on, what was the cloud, what type of project it happened on, what type of information was there. How did they do this? Through the CLI, through the console, what was the source IP, the MITRE ATT&CK framework? We can even pinpoint that to the exact set of events that triggered this type of policy, and even see the set of raw information that made us trigger. All of this out of the box without the user having to do anything. This is what I call DLP 2.0, or of course, data detection and response, which is a new term that all of you are having. And all of this, again, comes with a very simple policy of how do we do this. Onboarding is super simple, and that's kind of the process there. So this was a very quick session. Now, what I wanted to do is, first off, let's hop over to a session with Tomer, where we're going to talk about how Tomer kind of operationalized like data security in one of the largest data security, and like one of the largest data companies in the world. And then what we're going to do, in the last 10 minutes, we're going to do a session of questions, and I'll be able to answer any questions around DSPM in general or specifically about the product, okay? So let's switch over to the other one. Yeah, there we go. And let's go over here. So, Tomer, maybe quickly introduce yourself, and let's kind of talk about data security, posture management, and AI security.
All the fun stuff.
All the fun stuff.
So, hi everyone. My name is Tomer Gershoni. Until about a week ago, I was the Chief Security Officer for ZoomInfo. So you see the smile. I've retired from that role last week. Therefore, I'm smiling. ZoomInfo was my fourth CISO role. I was previously leading security for the enterprise software business of HP and for the Israeli National Cyber Directorate, which is practically the Israeli government. And I was leading product security and threat intel for Imperva. Overall, more than 20 years in the cybersecurity space.
Cool. And Tomer, Tomer and I met, I think, about a couple years ago. Can you share, first off, your journey with DSPM? What led you to implement this technology? What were you trying to achieve? And then after that, let's kind of talk about the important factors of choosing a specific vendor and when to go into this technology, when to not go into this technology, expectations, and so on.
Sure. So when I joined ZoomInfo, within the first 90 days, I analyzed what's working well, what doesn't work well. I built some kind of a benchmark analysis. Also engaged with an external vendor to run this overall benchmark analysis and understand our overall security posture across the board. ZoomInfo, for those of you who are not familiar with, are providing solutions to salespeople to identify signals of potential buyers. So those of you who are buyers over here, I'm the one to blame, or I was the one to blame for all of those sales emails that you are getting. Now seriously, if one of the key assets that we hold in order to provide the solutions to our customers is our customers' data. So we are integrating with your environments and pulling data and then using that to enrich the overall data that we collect and store from our customers. So within those 90 days, I did the benchmark analysis. I understood what's working well, what does not work well, and I built a strategy, a security strategy for the company that focused on 4 investment areas. One of those investment areas was data governance and data security. And that's because literally our crown jewels is our customer data, and we have to put it as the number one priority to protect that data that we are getting from our customers. And that's what led us to start thinking on how to do that. Now, obviously, the data security, those of you who have been in the security space and specifically in the data security market, you will know that the data security market is kind of immature. I mean, we focused on infrastructure, we focused on AppSec, but data security was a little bit of encryption, a little bit of database monitoring, but nothing more than that. And with the cloud coming, that created an explosion of data. And across the board, it was very hard to control the data. So my number one priority, and that's a catchphrase that I put for the company, was to control our data. And the only way to do that, to control the data across the board, was using DSPM technology. So that follows to your question, Dan, about why we went throughout this path.
And also as a new CISO for ZoomInfo, I think you joined a couple years ago, 3 years-ish, right? Mm-hmm. You mentioned to me many times that this was not the first time that I heard this specific thing, is it provided you as the basis of having mature discussions with your engineering teams, because once you already analyze which data each team was holding, then you were able to have mature discussions of why are we keeping this data? Mm-hmm. Why are we bringing this information? Why are we not putting all secrets in a secrets manager?
It's not only that. It's a matter of that finally you have visibility into where your data resides, what's the level of sensitivity, and who has access to it. And once you have this triangle of mapping, classification, and access, you finally have visibility into controlling your data. The additional angle was also related to our security strategy, another path in the security strategy, which was related to breach readiness. The goal behind breach readiness was to make sure that in case we'll have a breach, and listen, we see it out there, we're investing tons in cybersecurity, and still organizations are getting breached. So from my point of view, as someone that's seen here and there things throughout the industry, it's just a matter of time. So I want to make sure that in case we get breached, our response is fast, so we are able to reduce the impact of that breach. And the DDR capabilities that Dan described before was allowing us to get fast visibility into what's going on, into who is doing what with the data, and in case we see some kind of malicious activity. And Dan described his example. We had our own similar examples of not malicious activity necessarily, but just human mistakes, or a DevOps engineer or a data engineer that thought that it might be a good idea to just pull down the entire data storage of customer data to his own laptop, and that's obviously create a risk to you as a CISO. And bottom line, we finally got the visibility and context to talk. Literally, both with the engineering teams, but not only with them, talk with the executive leadership about, what's the status of our data, what are the risks associated with the way that we manage data, and put context behind it, not just a theoretical discussion.
Mm-hmm. Now, the ZoomInfo environment is of course very large, thousands of accounts, both on multiple clouds, thousands of data stores. So it was a very interesting project. Now, when you kind of think about this specific category, this specific space, what do you think are the most important factors? And of course, each organization is different. But what do you think are the most important factors when choosing a vendor? Do you think it changes between a small company and a large company? Do you think that there's a minimum size for kind of choosing a data security strategy? Let's kind of talk about those specific aspects when we kind of talk about choosing a DSPM technology and so on.
Yeah, so obviously the scale matters. However, when it comes into controlling your data, the technology that stands behind the data mapping and integrating with different data storage or databases technologies, together with the accuracy of data classification and accuracy of mapping, who has access to what within your environment, was extremely important to us, and we were evaluating DIG together with additional vendors in that space. We found the DIG results very good. Now, in addition to that, however, there are a lot of vendors in that space that were created within the last 2, 3, 4 years, it takes time to really distinguish between what's the qualities of this vendor versus the other. However, since this market of DSPM is extremely young and immature to some degree, and we are seeing the matureness coming throughout the last year with different acquisitions and investments across the board. It's very important when you are evaluating your vendor, your DSPM vendor or DSPM technology, it's important to also look into the strategy. What is it that is coming through from that vendor? Because the current capabilities only carry a certain or support certain area of the risk. But we also need to be forward-looking in regards to where we're heading in regards to data security.
Definitely. And I would maybe add also that I think the velocity of deployment and management of the tool, I think, is very important. I think that's kind of what distinguishes the evolution of data security 1.0 and data security 2.0. And of course, I won't mention who are the older vendors and who are the newer vendors, but any solution today that requires manual work of organizations to manually connect data stores, manually provision access, manually kind of feed the tool with any type of insights, that is a solution that will not scale in large environments. So I think, again, having a tool that works for you versus you having to work for it, I think is a very important factor. Now, let's talk a little bit about everyone's kind of hot topic, favorite topic. AI security is kind of the new...
on.
I mean, AI security is the new buzzword. I think Palo Alto even had a video with Keanu Reeves about AI security and him fighting some robots. So how do we secure AI? In your perspective, how does data and AI kind of connect? And let's kind of stop there and ask the second question.
I see AI security as a subset of data. The AI security problem is a subset of data security problem. So in the end, when you're looking into AI or LLM engines, in the end, they are just generating additional sets of data. However, they are doing that in mass scale. Nothing to compare with what we experienced before. And that's our largest problem, because the scale of and amounts of data that the AI and LLM engines are generating, together with the fact that the data that goes out of the engine is extremely unexpected. I mean, you know what you're putting into the machine, you don't know what it will come out. And when you're trying to expect the unexpected, it's, as a CISO, when you're trying to control your data and when you're trying to evaluate risk, the worst thing is the unexpected. So think about that. We have a set of data assets that we simply don't know what they contain and where they reside and what will the next day bring. So that's the biggest challenge that I see for us as the AI, in the era of AI and how it's being associated with data security. Now, having said that, I think that we are not in a very bad position right now because we have set up, in the last few years, we have set up the foundations for data security using DSPM, etc. However, we're seeing right now multiple vendors coming out with saying, yeah, I'll secure your AI data. You cannot jump, since from my point of view, AI security is a subset of data security. Simply jumping ahead and going just to secure AI or AI security generated data will not, without having the foundations of data security, will not be sufficient. And therefore, we need to be very careful in the industry as a whole around how we tackle this problem of AI security and protecting that data.
And when you were exploring, and I remember that we had multiple conversations about it, what were you looking for when you looked for AI security? I mean, of course, data security and understanding which AI models are being fed which types of data, but what were the different types of aspects that you were trying to also protect when you were thinking about AI security?
So on top of the points that I mentioned before, when it came to AI security, I believe that the governance, the data governance aspects, or AI governance, that's a very hot buzzword these days, is key. And obviously, with the fact that everyone in the company, unless you have a certain policy, can go download an AI engine, LLM engine, open source to some degree, and start generating new amounts of data or sending data to third parties, that creates you with a huge risk. So therefore, the point of governing AI and making sure that we have the right technologies, the secure technologies across the ecosystem was extremely important. On top, and to complement that, ZoomInfo was one of the first companies joining the responsible AI agenda, and that one of the reasons that allowed us to take this path was having this set of controlling our data already before we entered the AI. We were always there, but before we moved there in scale.
And maybe I have to ask this as a vendor, but why do you think that the approach that Prisma Cloud with AI-SPM was kind of the correct one? What were you looking for, and what have you found, at least?
So I think that, I mentioned that before. I think that overall, what I've seen from your overall strategy is definitely taking or providing you with the foundations to take a step forward. There, together with the fact that you're already doing data security, and AI security is a subset of that versus the competition who is just jumping into the AI security problem.
Of course. Now, to all of you, and I know that each one is in a different step around the journey. Maybe some of you already have a DSPM technology. Maybe some of you are kind of thinking about it. What are the tips that you have for organizations kind of trying to implement DSPM, AI-SPM, like technologies across their organizations? What did you learn from your journey of what worked well, what didn't work well? Who are the people that need to manage those types of products? Maybe that's also an interesting question, and I can give you my perspective from our customers as well, what we've seen that works and what doesn't. But maybe kind of let's share your experience with ZoomInfo of implementing the actual technology, tips, do's and don'ts. Don't share too many don'ts, but
how much time do we have? No, seriously, it's about a 2 years journey of implementing, starting with the thoughts about how to build that, and later on going and start implementing the technology until it start to deliver the valuable deliverables. But overall, I believe that when you're going and to tackle this data security or control your data problem, the first point that I would consider is, first of all, have the right people to do both data governance and data security. So data governance from owning the governance piece of data, and since unfortunately the cybersecurity community is not rich of people with data background, right? So we have to find the right talent which has the relevant background that could jump into those roles. So it's either people, when it comes into data governance, it's either people who has relevant governance, GRC background, or people with compliance, etc. background. But those are the right, and build them towards data governance and those kinds of processes. When it comes into data security, in the cloud is a completely different monster when it comes into data security. So we can take either data security, the traditional data security engineers that were focusing on-prem and transition them into the cloud, or take even data engineering people and train them to do security. But having those people in place to run this agenda was an extremely important step from my point of view to succeed in that mission. In addition to that, you have to engage the company. So data is everywhere, right? It touches, and when you're running processes that will impact data, it touches everyone, from engineering, data analysts, data science, data engineering, IT, corporate applications, obviously compliance and legal and privacy. It touches everyone. And even sales who interact with our customers in the end. And we want to get feedback from them about what our customers are asking. Therefore, it was essential to create some kind of a coalition that will have an understanding of the problem, what we are trying to achieve, and engage that coalition towards this objective of controlling your data. So we built what we called a data security subcommittee, which was reporting to the corporate security steering committee, which was the executive leadership of the company. And they were they were mandated to report on a quarterly basis the risks and the progress that we're making upon remediating those risks when it comes into controlling your data. And that was extremely helpful to accelerate the remediation of data security risk and to overall support this agenda of controlling data. And the last point, once you create that engagement with the executive leadership, they suddenly see the value of how the DSPM technology and the overall data security and data governance projects are contributing not only to security, but also to engineering and IT velocity, productivity, efficiency. Dan was talking about shadow backups. Obviously, that's a risk from security perspective, but that also has a very high operational cost of storing those data. So those guys, the FinOps guys, the finance guys, they saw value of that we are bringing back. Obviously, it was not the main one, but was providing significant value to reduce cost across the enterprise. So if I would try to provide you with some advice, those are the people, and not necessarily just the technology, was the ones that I would focus on.
A couple of things that I would probably add to that. I saw organizations that were able to move quickly. We were organizations that actually had a person in data security that was in the organization for a while. Not specifically in data security, but because data security will have to interact and say, oh, I remember that John once had that application and had something like that. Or, oh, I can reach out to like Sarah, and Sarah would probably know who's that they know the ins and outs of the organization to kind of navigate through. I think that's great. And in the large organizations, automation first. And what do I mean by automation first? You should never expect that a single centralized team will be able to tackle all data security on their own. You will have to find a way very quickly to distribute that to the development teams as fast as you can. for them to be able to serve and tackle and resolve those types of issues first. I've seen organization automate through SNS. I've seen organization automatically open Jira tickets. Each organization, of course, will do that. But that goes and is built on phases. So first off, of course, you'll have the issue. Then you'll have to attribute that issue to which development team or which data owner. And then, of course, automation of tickets and opening an issue. Hey, we found credit cards in your bucket. Or, hey, we found developer secrets in that specific database. Or, hey, we found a database that doesn't have a retention policy and that violates our compliance. Depends on each one. I know that we're out of time. I see the red lights. But thanks, everyone, for hopping on the call, for, of course, joining us. If you have any questions, I think we're going to be here for the next couple of minutes until they kick us out. But thanks for geeking out with us on data security. And I think we have a booth. I don't remember their booth number, but you can visit us in the Palo Alto Networks booth or just reach out on LinkedIn or anything like that. So thanks so much and appreciate it.
Thank you very much.